Patch 1.46 of Guilty Gear Strive has dropped, and while there aren't any direct character buffs or nerfs in this patch, everything is pretty much bug fixes. There are a couple of features, both on purpose and on accident, that do exist in this patch, and so I wanted to do a brief video covering over all the things that do exist in this version of the game, just to keep everybody aware of what Arc System Works has changed. For starters, let's take a look at the old version of Training Mode. Negative penalty was always on, so while I'm sitting here talking, negative penalty is just ticking down, adding in this extra little bit of background noise element and things like that, sort of messing around with the settings. If you had the command input history on, you had all of your inputs, and that was pretty much it. There wasn't a timer to them to add an extra layer of readability to what timing you needed to do to press what certain options. You kind of had to watch the tape and get an understanding there. You also had no frame data built into training mode before. Pretty much any access to frame data was off the back of hardworking volunteers who would painstakingly record footage, count the frames down, and then come up with the numbers and then upload those to Dust Loop. When we take a look at the new training mode, we can see that there is finally a ton of information that has now been added in to make us more aware of what is going on in Guilty Gear Strive, and it should be easier for labbing to be approached. Granted, a lot of the groundwork for plenty of the previous cast has already been done, but now you can kind of just go into training mode and boot up and take a look and immediately know what you are cooking with. As you might notice, it does display the total action time, attack startup, frame advantage, and the follow-up window across for both characters. If you go to training settings and display, you can make this player 1 only, which I feel like is a little more important for most of your time labbing, but perhaps you want to look at the player 2 data as well. And so you can see here that there's a 1 frame window to follow up, because there's a frame 1 advantage. Follow-up window and frame advantage is 4 here, right? Frame advantage is -4, but a follow-up window of 0. So there's a bunch of different things that you can sort of look to explore. This could mean that it is easier for us to discover potential setups, as well as understand how we were off on particular setups. If you mistime a safe jump and you see that you were off by 1 or 2 frames, there's just a lot more transparency as far as what information you are able to see in training mode, which overall means we're able to uncover more about the game in a more effective way without having to do as much real nitty-gritty digging, right? If a setup doesn't work for some reason, odds are you can look at the numbers and see, oh, I see I was off by a frame or 2 when it came to doing a particular meaty. And again, this just means that you're able to discover a lot more information in a much easier fashion. You'll also note on the left-hand side that we do have timers next to all the button presses. So then this way you can kind of see if there's a particular timing for when you need to do a Kara input, when you need to do a particular normal input, special move input, etc., etc. And you can really fine-tune some of your timings here to see, oh, I got this one combo before. How did I get that to work? Oh, I had to hit this move at this particular timing. Honestly, these are all really good changes. I know some people are a little bit down on this just because it's a pretty bare bones training mode. It's very comparable to what I'm used to in Dragon Ball FighterZ. And for people who have been modding their PC versions of Guilty Gear Strive to have the entire Street Fighter 6 fancy bar overlay at the bottom of the screen, this definitely isn't quite to that same caliber. But the fact that this does exist for everyone to inherently have without needing to take an extra step to download a mod on PC or for console players to have is still a really good step in the right direction. I still think it's crazy to me that this game didn't release with this kind of information and that it took us effectively 4 or 5 years in order to actually get this out of the game, but it's here now, so I will simply be thankful for it. You'll also note, too, that there is no negative penalty being triggered as I'm hanging out and talking for extended periods of time. That's because under gauge settings, you can actually disable negative penalty from this menu here. Really doesn't come up too often, but it's pretty nice just to be able to leave training mode open and not for a random negative penalty to come on through just because we're standing here for a set bit of time, right? If you drop the controller, get up and get something, negative penalty isn't going to come trigger anything. There were 2 system mechanic changes to throws and how they interact with Roman canceling, so let's go ahead and go over them one by one. For starters, if you input a Roman cancel just before the final hit of a throw would connect on throws that did multiple attacks, you would get a PRC at times. For a character like Abba, this could be potentially pretty annoying. In the current patch, they basically disabled that function, so if you ever input the RC in between those 2 attacks, you will always get the final hit to connect, and you will always get a red Roman cancel. On the surface, it looks like just a nice quality of life change to make sure that you don't accidentally lose out on throw damage. However, a side effect of this is that characters who would intentionally take advantage of this property do suffer a nerf. For example, Chip could go ahead and do a PRC just before the final hit of his throw to get an air normal to connect and then lead into some extensive combo sequences. That's a very rudimentary example, but I do have a more advanced one on hand. Courtesy of ScarfGR on Twitter, this is a potential combo route that you could do before. You'll also note how unhappy they are with the change. This is a pretty powerful sequence, both in terms of the Okizeme that you can opt for, as well as the damage that you could get before. However, because of this change in the system mechanics for Chip, you are no longer able to get a PRC before the final hit of his throw. You will always get the final hit of the throw, and then RC. You can see in my recording inputs exactly when I'm pressing RC. It's well before the actual hit connects, but I'm locked out of RCing before that final hit. While this is a net nerf to Chip because he is losing a potential combo route as well as just options overall when it comes to his throw, it's not like Chip is completely gutted in terms of what he can do from his throw after using a Roman cancel. I have a few basic examples lined up for you all here. There's a lot of wiggle room for you in terms of when you time your Red Roman cancel, but overall, I'm going to leave it up to the Chip mains to look at what they have and build off of that one. Perhaps there is going to be routes like we saw in my earlier example from Twitter, where you can still kind of get the really good wall run attacks as well as some tightrope setup play. I'm sure Marvello's going to cook something up, and if not him, someone else will. I will say I can at least identify with the overall bummer it is for a character to lose a unique way that they interacted with the system mechanics. I can't think of too many characters in the game that interacted with throw RC by using a PRC to extend their combos, but functionally speaking, this shouldn't be too much of a difference for Chip. After all, ever since Red Roman cancels no longer scale the combos at all, it's not really like we're losing out on hyper optimization or damage. We're just sort of losing out on the positioning for Chip here, as well as the aesthetic of just having a purple Roman cancel. Maybe I'm underselling this nerf, maybe I'm overselling the nerf, but either way, I don't see how this is going to like drop Chip down a tier 2, but I do see it leaving a little bit of salt in Chip players' mouths at the very least. There was also a change to air throws. Previously, if your character did an air throw and they happened to push themselves away from the opponent, if you RC'd, you carried that momentum with you even if you didn't have any directional influence with your RC. As you can see, Chip floats back and he's pretty far away from Soul. However, if you do this now, your character no longer carries that momentum. They'll stop and fall straight to the ground. As you can see, Unica is much closer to Chip in this example here. This is nice just because it means it's going to be a little easier for you to pick up combos from this in the couple of situations where you might want to go for a combo here. At least that's what the patch notes themselves say. Outside of those universal system mechanic changes, there really isn't anything official or big going on with the 1.46 patch. However, there does seem to be a new behavior that is going around that the community has discovered, and Arc System Works has yet to comment on it. There are a couple of bug fixes listed within the patch themselves. One of them is a list to the disparity in the timing when the slowdown effect applied when canceling a normal or special move with red, blue, or blue Roman cancel if not performed at the soonest possible timing. That is a change that's been listed, but it might have had an impact on yellow Roman cancel by mistake. To demonstrate this, I'm going to go ahead and show you an example of what would happen in this situation before. Chip's going to run up to Soul, hit 5k, and you'll see that I'm able to safely block the yellow Roman cancel. This was a pretty monumental thing for a lot of pressure sequences, and this was also true with a lot of light normals too. 2p. Oh, he's out of his tension gauge. 5p for Chip as well, right? Meanwhile, his close slash was punishable, and some of these normals would vary character to character. However, if you compare this to the current version of the game, you're going to see that there's quite a bit of differences in terms of what is safe against the yellow Roman cancel. 5K gets punished, for example. 2K is still safe. 5P is still safe, as is 2P, but 5K for chip being unsafe isn't just an anomaly. Let's go ahead and look at Giovanna in this situation in the previous patch. 2K was safe, 5K was safe, and an empowered Travau. Compare that to the current version. Her 2K gets blown up by YRC, as does her 5K. And her empowered Travau. This is a massive gutting of Giovanna's pressure because now for some of these setups where, for example, she would like to use a meaty empowered Travau for some free plus frames, the opponent can react to that and YRC if they choose to spend their meter in that way. And this is something that's pretty true across the entire cast. YRC is incredibly effective in this build of Guilty Gear Strive, but it's not a specifically listed change. And I think that most of us have kind of pinned down that it has to do with the bug fix to the other Roman cancels that I mentioned earlier. And in fact, I got some side-by-side footage for us to compare real quick. So the new patch footage is on the left and the old patch footage is on the right, and I've slowed this down quite a bit, and you can see that in the new patch footage, there's an extra screen darkening effect when that YRC starts up, and I think that's causing an extra bit of slowdown. And that extra bit of slowdown means that some of these moves that were supposed to be YRC safe no longer are, and this behavior is what leads me to think it's a bug. As of May 27th at 5:39 Mountain Daylight Savings Time, Arc System Works does have a page up for known issues of 1.46, but this particular behavior of Yellow Roman cancel has yet to be listed in it. We got a couple of like incorrect command listings for Unica, I believe, some special command issues and other things like that, but no mention of this behavior with YRC, which I think is something that's going to be added probably within a couple of hours of me recording and posting this video, but we'll see what's up because I can't imagine Arc System Works would have intentionally like rebalanced this system mechanic to be such a potent option across the game. Typically, kicks and jabs have been the safe call out to YRC pressure, and for them, most of them, to not be that anymore would be a huge buff to defense that would kind of really hurt offense quite a bit. So we'll have to see how this whole situation develops as time goes on. The video was short. That's because the patch notes themselves were pretty short, but I appreciate y'all watching and staying up to date. Sound off anything that I might have missed in the comments section below, and I'll be seeing y'all around as Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising drops their patch for Galleon tomorrow, and I'm going to start working through all of the changes in that patch. Take care, y'all.